Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomena, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light. Welcome to the Connecting with Coincidence radio show with Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, bringing together the world's synchronicity experts to help you use meaningful coincidences to develop spiritually, psychologically, and practically. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence into your web browser to find the book, website, Psychology Today blog, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. And now, here is the host of the Connecting with Coincidence radio show, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD.
Welcome to CC with BB. Yes, this is Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, with Connecting with Coincidence. Look up in the sky. There is a mystery of a coincidence up there. The sun and the moon are 93 million miles apart, yet appear to us on Earth to be the same size. Think of the solar eclipse. The moon passes in front of the sun, blocking the light, making daytime into night. The moon is just the right size at just the right distance to act as if it's the same size as the sun. What a coincidence! What a coincidence? The moon and the sun have been major symbols for generations of human beings. Yin and yang, male and female. The coincidence of their same size could be a message to us. Balance our opposites. Pay attention to coincidences. We here are coinciders. We experience meaningful coincidences. We become insiders together, finding the symbols popping up all around us. We look through the lenses of synchronicity and serendipity and find guidance and connections that expand the filters of conventional reality. Our minds are immersed in a mental atmosphere, the psychosphere, through which we can be telepathic and sense the future. We can also use the psychosphere to activate our human GPS, the ability to get where we need to be without a map. Sharpen your sensitivity to coincidences. Examine their potential uses and explanations. Read my book, Connecting with Coincidence, and learn along with me. Synchronicity, spoken here. Our guest today is Pagan Kennedy. Pagan tells stories about cultural rebels, humanitarian inventors, and scientific visionaries. Her 11 books include The First Man-Made Man, a study of the transgender pioneer Michael Dillon. Kennedy's journalism has appeared in dozens of publications, including the New York Times. for which she is now a contributing editor in the opinions section. She is also co-producing a serial podcast for the Radiotopia network. Pagan is the author of the forthcoming book, Inventology, How We Dream Up Things That Change the World. As a Knight Science Journalism Fellow at MIT in 2010-11, Pagan studied microbiology and neuroengineering. She has won numerous other awards, including an NEA Fellowship, a Smithsonian Fellowship, and 2 Massachusetts Cultural Council Fellowships. Pagan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. And just one correction, I'm actually, thank God I'm not a editor at the New York Times, because that would just be way too much work. I'm actually a contributing writer there.
Yeah, I skipped that one over. I really did.
Yeah.
A contributing writer for the old New York Times opinion section.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, let's start off with a serendipity synchronicity of yours.
Oh, you know what? I'm not a believer that there's anything out there that's outside of my head that is causing serendipity or synchronicity. I'm a firm believer that it's all happening inside my head and our heads. And but I think that in itself is fascinating enough. And I've been covering invention and ideas, sort of how people come up with ideas, for a very long time as a journalist. And one of the most fascinating things to me is the whole realm of what we call accidental invention. So I think that's probably the closest kind of area to what you're interested in.
It's a matter of how you think about things happening, and particularly the definition of chance, which we'll get back to. But how did you get interested in writing about serendipity?
Well, honestly, it actually started when I was asked used to write for the New York Times Magazine, and I did a column for them called Who Made That? And every week they would give me an object. Often it was not an object I picked, but one that would look like really nice in the picture, because they had these gorgeous, huge photographs. And then I would have to go find the story behind it. So that was like a graduate level education in how things get invented that I was treated to and paid to do, which was just eye-opening and amazing. So I talked week after week with people who had come up with these ideas that often these people themselves were not known, and it was often very hard to find them. But their products or what they invented were very well known. So like the thing you pick up, the ball hopper that you pick up tennis balls with, that would be an object, or the super soaker, or the ice cream cone, or, and in some cases the people were long dead, but it was still really interesting to look into their stories. So I began to notice patterns in how there was like a certain point where I'd done like 30 maybe of these stories and talked to a lot of inventors. And I began to see, it was very exciting, because I was sort of feeling, oh my God, maybe I'm seeing the secret sauce, because there's a lot of methods that people seem to use to come up with these game-changing ideas. But it wasn't one secret. It was definitely several different ones. And the way things that came into the world fit a number of different patterns. So one pattern, which is not as relevant to you, is that there are people whose job or life situation puts them in the way of a great idea, and they know things. For instance, surgeons are incredibly inventive because they know things about surgery that nobody else knows, and they know things about the problems, that things that go wrong in surgery and go wrong with the tools. So there's just things that they know about the problem that nobody else can know. So there's that privileged knowledge of the problem. Or people with, say, disabilities, they know way more about the problems with wheelchairs and things like that.
And this is one of the points that I think you bring out so clearly, that there are two ways that people come up with serendipities. And the way you think about it, one is a deep, intimate relationship with the problem, as you're talking about. Not somebody sitting on high thinking about it. It's somebody who's got to deal with it right here, right now, and they come up with an answer because they need to.
Yeah, and I'm not sure you'd call that serendipity. It's more like kind of a deep knowledge, deep hands-on knowledge, and that we often don't respect, that kind of knowledge enough, I think.
Right, I agree with you.
The second the second form of, there was actually 4 patterns I noticed. I won't go into them all, but the second one I came across, I was interviewing, actually, Lonnie Johnson, this fascinating inventor who came up with the super soaker. But he was he's a very interesting guy. He's African American. He faced all kinds of discrimination as a child, but was a complete technical genius and ended up working at NASA as an engineer. And there was a day, and so he was telling me a story of this day in the 80s when he came home. It was on a weekend, and he was working on a heat pump that used water, and he was working on a nozzle that would really shoot water with a lot of power into, I don't know how you make heat pumps, but
what it came to be is that he stumbled across something that was a potential solution. And this is one of the points you make so well, is that he had a thing that he didn't know what to do with. Here was a potential thing that could be used, and he spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to use that nozzle, and he ended up with the super soaker.
Well, yeah, and what he told me about that moment, he had hooked up this nozzle in his bathroom, and there was a way that the water shot out of it with all this power, and there was something toy-like and cartoony. And so it wasn't just that he saw something, he fell in love with it. And I think it's that love. And that's what kept him through the,
that's what kept him.
So it's that love.
He had a lot to go through to make it happen. And I think, again, with both of those points you're making about a person close to the problem and here seeing a solution that he could fall in love with and try to make happen, the person uses that term informed observation or sagacity that Walpole used to create serendipity.
Yeah, and so I think that, had he not been so passionate about it, he just would have gone about his day and continued to be a NASA engineer, which is fine. But, there was something, and there's often, you talk to people and it's almost like they feel like they found, $1 million bill on the street that nobody else has noticed. They're like, there's so much opportunity here. Why can't everybody else see this?
Why can't everybody else see it? We're coming to the end of this segment, and you're making a very important point that I hadn't thought of, that emotional energy put into what the person sees. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Pagan Kennedy.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome back to CC with BB. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD. We're talking with Pagan Kennedy about serendipity, and I think, Pagan, you are broadening the definition of serendipity as I have understood it, especially with this investment in emotion and several other things. But how do you define serendipity?
So I define it. How do I define it? Well, I think as you and I were emailing, there's several kinds of serendipity.
Yes.
But I would say that there's maybe a couple of pieces that are required in an accidental invention or a serendipitous event. And one is there has to be the trigger, which is you notice something in your environment that is very, it's an opportunity that is really interesting to you, that puts you onto something that other people haven't seen. But so you have to have that accident, but you also need to have, as Walpole said, you have the kind of event and then you have the sagacity. But I think that we tend to get a little too hung up sometimes on the event. So much of it is being able to recognize what you're seeing.
Yes.
And, I'm really fascinated in what might be called anti-serendipity, which is where somebody sees the thing that they could have, like the $1 million idea, but they don't. So a great example of that is, I'm sure on your show you brought up Alexander Fleming. And
I have some more questions there too about him. Yeah, but please, but go through it because it's been a while since I brought it up.
Yeah. So actually, the story, the very brief story is that Fleming was playing around with lab dishes, and he noticed that when some penicillin, when this fungus got into his lab dish, it killed the bacteria. It made these holes in it, like it was eating it away. And that, of course, suggested the idea that there could be this antibacterial medicine that could be, and that idea has transformed our world, and we're able to have surgery, modern surgery, and all the rest because of it.
Well, I want to come back to what you're saying, but that's not the whole story from what I know of it.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because Fleming really didn't know what he had found. He knew it's something he was looking for. He was looking for an antibiotic that would work rather than the sulfa drugs that weren't so effective. But he presented it to a conference. He was kind of bland in presenting it. Nobody paid attention to it. It was then taken over to Oxford to be able to clean laboratory flasks to get bacteria out of the flask. And that's all they used it for. But somebody then figured out you might try this out on guinea pigs instead of rats. And the guinea pig was a better choice because it would have killed the rats, or the other way around. But there were a lot of other steps in that, maybe 10 of them, ending with Moldy Mary in Peoria, Illinois, while the U.S. military was out there looking for penicillin fungus that could produce mass amounts, because you needed a strain that would do that, they were all over the world looking for it. And Moldy Mary, a lab assistant, was down at the farmer's market and saw a cantaloupe, a melon with this golden stuff on it, and brought it in for the guys to look at. And this was the highest producing penicillin mold that they found around the world. That was a serendipitous event that capped a whole series of serendipity events. I ask you about that because that whole string is the most fascinating, the most impressive serendipity string I've ever seen.
Right. I mean, I'm sort of yes, you're right. It's much more complicated than I presented. And a lot of the problem was there was a whole string of things that had to happen to make it something that you could create in, vast, like buckets of, just huge, you could figuring out how to actually process it and make a lot of it affordably was another problem. But Fleming was the person associated with just making the connection that there's something here.
Yes,
and,
he was.
And the part I want to put a spotlight on is that he did make that mental connection that nobody else had made before. But before him, there were people who had noticed the same thing. They had noticed, this penicillin, strain seems to be killing bacteria. What of it? Big deal, and there's even publications where they sort of notice that, but they don't see their significance. And to be fair, Fleming himself didn't see the full significance.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Of this, but he was kind of the first step. You know what I mean? So what interests me is the people before Fleming who didn't see it. And in drug discovery, actually the whole world of drug discovery and artificial sweeteners is a world of serendipity, because there's all kinds of things that you can't logically figure out.
This is really interesting how you're thinking about this, because you have been able to come up with the iconoclasts, the people who see things other people don't see patterns that others don't see. But what strikes me in what you're telling me about the anti-serendipity people who did not notice, but they did kind of notice and did write it up. They just weren't right next to Oxford, who somehow heard that Fleming had this stuff that could then clean out laboratory flasks. That was a link that is much more important now that you're telling me about the anti-serendipity guys, because Fleming could have been just like those other guys, unless the flask needed to be cleaned and they knew they could get it from Fleming.
Well, I would argue that he saw use in it and was excited about it in a way that other people before him, they may have mentioned it, but they didn't see anything in it. And so that's what interests me, is that because I think that we are kind of probably often in an anti-serendipity state where we're seeing something that could be of enormous value and we're just not realizing it.
Absolutely. And it's one of the points I've been trying to make about how much there is out there that can be useful to us. I call them coincidences that we don't pay attention to. It's not just about inventions. It's about ideas. It's about helping people with problems and with decision makings, making them aware of psychological things that they might not have been aware of. So I am trying to do something like what you're describing, which is become aware of the potentials around us.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is, and I'm not sure how you do that exactly. I mean, some of the people who, you can find cases of this, the people who did notice. I think it's really interesting to study the people who did notice versus the people didn't. And like you say, some of them happen to be in the right place where they could actually have the power to make use of that revelation. But often they're very similar, in their just being lab researchers who, there just was some, and I actually think that it comes down a lot to this emotion, whether you get excited about it or not.
Oh yeah. Emotion's a big driver, yes.
And I think that's also because I've interviewed so many inventors, and there's a real piece of their personality that is they get very excited and they're not driven, as opposed to like you watch Shark Tank or something, you get the idea that first of all, you're not going to make, most people who come up with these major ideas that change the world, they don't benefit from it.
Yeah.
I just want to say that,
it's
they
true.
are doing it because of the love, because they want to change things, or they're just excited about an idea. And it's sort of, there's a sort of paradoxical effect. Whereas I think if you really are driven by the need to make a lot of money or to get results, you may not stop to notice some of these things.
There's a somebody's law that says if the idea is named after someone, that person didn't invent it.
Right.
And that's so clear what you're saying, Pagan. It's about that it's the love and drive, curiosity that makes it happen. They just get caught up in what they're doing and thinks it's so wonderful. And then somebody else comes along and says, well, I can make a little bit of money on this here, honey. So they come along and make their own name for it. You've described people as super encounterers. You've used the term serendipiter. I think you're describing what a super encounterer is. Are there any other characteristics?
Yeah. Well, I should say that term super encounterer comes from a scholar named Sanda Erdelitz. And she did these really interesting studies where she looked at how people do research. And she saw that there are different styles. And there are some people, and this really gets to serendipity versus anti-serendipity. There's some people who, they have a research paper and they're like, I need to answer this question. So they just they march along and they do it, and they don't get distracted. And they just, figure out what they're going to do, and they do it, and they don't go on any side trips.
Well, let's we have to stop coming to the end of this segment. We're talking about the single focused person who puts the blinders on to get the thing accomplished. That's one subset that you're talking about that Erdelitz was mentioning. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Pagan Kennedy, and we are talking heavy about serendipity.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Welcome back to CC with BB. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, and we're talking with Pagan Kennedy about serendipity. And we've just talked about one form of what a scholar at University of Missouri calls serendipitors. And this is one subset of people who just keep going. They got the blinders on. They don't allow themselves to be distracted.
Yes, she actually calls these people non-encounterers.
Non-encounterers.
So she has three designations. One is non-encounterers, then there's people in the middle, occasional encounters, and then there's super encounters.
Okay.
So if you're a non-encounterer, you have a paper to write, you go and research it, you write the paper. If you're a super encounterer, you go, start looking up your topic, and then along the way, or you don't even have a topic, you just start, go to an old bookstore and start looking at, pictures of cows in the 19th century and just start wandering around, kind of convinced that if you just kind of wander enough, you're going to find a great idea.
Well, I was wandering around in the stacks of a library at Swarthmore College, a little bored, looking for something I didn't know what, and ran across a book called A Theory of Personality by George Kelly. And the basic idea of that was expectation influences experience. And that idea has stayed with me because it's so fundamental to the way human beings operate. What we expect to happen has a lot to do with what we actually see happening, and that's what you're describing. But for this book had another impact on me. I was applying for a psychiatric residency at Stanford, and I walked in and talked to Fred Melgis, a faculty member who was interviewing me, and he says, "What do you know?" pretty much. And I started talking about George Kelly. I knew people who were psychoanalysts very well, but I didn't, and nobody had ever talked to me about George Kelly in medical school. But I started talking about George Kelly, and his eyes lit up, and he says, "I'm following a lot of George Kelly's work in developing a future-oriented psychotherapy." And we talked about George Kelly. And that interview, that link from a library wandering around looking for who knows what, and then I found it, helped me get into a residency at Stanford.
Yeah, and that example is a great one because you, you were, super encountering there, and part of that is that you clearly love to forage. You have to also love it. and the people who are super encounters so love just kind of foraging for new ideas that they often, she noticed that they would often, help, would be the yentas who would set up friends with, dates, or she would, they just love.
That's a good one. I like these ones that are just out there in the real world, not just regular, like inventing things, but the yentas that would come up.
Yeah.
Oh no, you could. This one fits with that one, and I'll try to put them together. What are some of the other examples like that out in the world, not in research?
Well, I would like to say, I think what Sandra, when we talked, and she made me think about how. So you talked about how you had this faith. There's a kind of faith that if you follow your instincts and just forage, you'll happen upon the right path and the right idea.
Yes.
And so that's again, it's a very emotional. There's emotional as well as an intellectual piece. It's a kind of.
Well, you don't. Well, you don't think the way I do about this. I think we have a human GPS capacity that allows us to get to that place we need to go, driven by the emotion that you're talking about.
Well, but I want to kind of put a wrinkle in it, because what I began to realize is you can go too far in the direction of super encountering.
Yes.
And I'm sure we all have done that. And the internet is like a dangerous rabbit hole of super encountering. And anybody who's sort of went to look something up and 10 hours later, researched the history of spinning wheels or something without meaning to do it, knows that there is a dark side to serendipity and super encountering, and that we can definitely go too far in that direction and get too addicted to foraging.
And not to just coming up with something that's useful for you.
Yeah, and it's very hard to know the difference, because a lot of it is, you do have to have that open-ended, up for anything attitude. But
isn't that where informed observation comes in?
Yeah, I think it does, but I think it is also. I think the internet is, in the way that we can all kind of fall down the Twitter hole, does show that you can get stuck in the foraging phase in a way that might not be healthy sometimes.
Yes, agreed. So these super encounterers can do a lot of foraging, but the successful ones can observe with information and then come up with something that they love, as I did with this George Kelly book. I kept reading that book years afterwards, just because coming back to it, trying to understand it, because as you're describing it, emotionally, I knew there was something here for me to understand.
Yeah, and that ability, that there definitely has to be that second phase where you fall in love with one. You fell in love. You knew it when you saw it.
I did. Now, what do you do? How do you, in your thinking, then put together the fact that I then brought this book up at just the right time to facilitate my getting into a residency program?
Who knows? You probably were talking about that book a lot at the time if you were excited about it. So there may have been.
I was not. You
weren't.
They weren't interested in that on Haight Street in the late 60s. They were not interested in that. That wasn't the thing that we were talking about. It was more like tarot cards and astrology, not George Kelly.
I don't know. I mean, you could have sensed something about him that told you.
That's my favorite possibility is that I scanned his bookshelf and saw the book on there, which seems that's a guess. I had my glasses off, so I probably couldn't have seen it, but some intuitive thing sitting there had me say George Kelly to him rather than Sigmund Freud or somebody else that I knew. And that's the mystery that I look at, is how that happened. And because we may differ in how we understand these things, I'm very interested in how you would explain how I brought that up at this time after having been in my mind for several years.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that we can err on the side of thinking things that are coincidence because we discount just how many random things happen, and we pay attention to the ones that seem significant, but there's, thousands of more times where you didn't make a connection.
Right.
And so we tend to just look at the ones where something turned out in an interesting way or looked like a coincidence. I would say, that's a way of not seeing how many non-coincidences, mostly life is non-coincidences. Well,
one of the fun things about being where I am is noticing that that the two major explanations for coincidences is the one that you're saying, which is in a large population, lots of weird things can happen, and they're always happening, but we only pay attention to a few. David Spiegelhalter was on the show last week, and it was really fun seeing how he thought. And on the other end, there are ones who say it's the universe that is doing it, or mystery, or God. And I'm looking at more conventional ways of thinking, adding some extra stuff that might include telepathy and heightened intuitive capacities to explain some of these things. Because we are doing this ourselves. I believe we are part of these coincidence creations. But I'm not going to try to. I just wanted to mention how I think about these things.
Yeah, I think about it more out of the lens of scientific research, which is, in order to have big discoveries in science, we have to spend huge amounts of money to let people do things that seem completely useless, and like an enormous amount of totally useless things have to happen. You know, a lot of people have to cut up worms and find nothing, or look at soil and find nothing much there, you know, or nothing that seems to be, find exactly what we'd expect there, or, you know, and so we have all these people all over the world, and we're spending billions of dollars on having people observe things. And then, you know, 1 out of every 1,000 of those people is going to, just because they happen to be putting their lens in the right place, they're going to find something that we absolutely didn't expect that turns out to be hugely significant and changes everything.
Beautiful description.
I would say, you know, can you make that cheaper, faster, better? How do you do that? You get better tools. So when when the world got microscopes, all of a sudden people were able to see these tiny microbes that had been invisible, and you had waves of scientific discoveries out of that. Or a telescope, you know, before the telescope, there was just only so much you could know. You give 1,000 people around the world a telescope, and you're going to have a wave of discovery because you have all these people who are now able to see things. So I think, you know, tools that heighten our power to observe the world and see things that were invisible are really exciting, and are kind of another method to these. You would call them serendipity. I think I would just call them discoveries.
We've come to the end of this segment. That's a beautiful description. You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest is Pagan Kennedy.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Eli Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
So I was watching the X-Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome back to CC with BB. Our guest today is Pagan Kennedy, and we just got a good look at how Pagan thinks about scientific discoveries enhanced by new technological inventions. One of the other points I've seen you wonder about comes from a paper entitled On the Exploitation of Serendipity in Drug Discovery. And they were puzzling over the reasons that in the 1950s and 60s there was a bonanza of breakthroughs in psychiatric medications, and that run of serendipity has ended. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm interested really to know why you think that happened.
Yeah, that is so interesting. You know, we had these actually, so many of the major blockbuster drugs were discovered at mid-century in the 20th century. And this was a time, like we were talking about penicillin and all the antibiotics. And then there were all the major psychiatric drugs were discovered. Many of them were discovered in the mid to late 20th century.
Right.
And things have really started to dry up.
Oh, yeah.
And around the time, so what changed? Well, a lot of those discoveries were happening when people were just randomly, first of all, you had people who were doctors were spending a lot more time with patients. So they were observing patients, and they weren't trying to necessarily discover drugs, but they were spending a lot of time with patients who had weird symptoms. And then you'd say, well, what happened? Well, maybe they took a drug for some other condition, and it changed their mental outlook, or it changed their something that happened to them physically. So there was
that was true of the tubercular drug, and it was a research project and they were using iproniazid as an anti-tubercular drug, and the patients got happy. And then it became something that looked in more deeply, and it became a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, and that set the stage for one form of antidepressive.
Yeah, that's very well put. So you might say, so that old method was just we have a lot of doctors observing things and trying random compounds on people with no plan.
That's right.
And we'll just see what happens.
We'll see if it works. Yeah.
And having no idea about what might work, but just sort of trying, just complete randomness and then observing what happens.
Yeah.
And so it was all kind of
That's right.
what you might call accidental. When it did work, you'd say, hey, what was that? And figure it out. And then the whole community, because that's super expensive, we moved, there were a lot of people who wanted to move to what they called, rational drug design, or, real trying to figure out, well, this say receptor in the brain looks like this, and what molecule would fit. So they're trying to figure it out rationally. And that's when drug discovery fell off the cliff. And so you've got to start to think that actually just observing, and, as expensive and annoying as this process might be, kind of what we might call the accidental method may work a lot better. And there may be new ways that we can speed that up with.
I think you're really describing a transition from, like, at least occasional encounterers to the non-encounterers who had blinders on and just had to try to see this rational way of doing things.
Yeah, and you can see where they're coming from, because, when you're going to say we're going to spend $1 billion on research, and then you have to explain this to your boss, and then you tell your boss, well, we're just going to do a whole bunch of random things. We're going to throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. That's not popular in corporate America because it just doesn't sound good. Even if it's more effective, people are very nervous about that. And
the Serendipity Society, which is fairly new, and it's to me mostly European, but also U.S. Serendipity Society is, and Samantha Copeland's going to be on in a couple of weeks, who's the co-director, co-chair of this, is trying to be able to establish the circumstances under which serendipity is more likely to occur. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's, I think in science and discovery, I think the conditions are, there are certain things, there are certain discoveries where you can see the problem and come up with a solution. But there are certain times where the solution, you won't even know that the problem exists because the solution is so out there, it's so weird, and the opportunity is so weird that we're not even aware of the problem. So an example would be laser technology. There was this guy named, I believe his name was Charles Towns, in around the 1950s, and he came up with this idea of creating a beam of electrons, laser beam that would burn holes in things. And, his colleagues were making fun of him and saying, oh, you managed to what does this thing do? This is the most useless thing I've ever seen. Because before we had lasers, we wouldn't think, oh, you could use a laser beam to do eye surgery or to send information. It was, you needed or another example, a really good example is artificial sweeteners, because there are a lot of chemicals that you can't predict. You'll take away one little piece of them and suddenly the taste will change, but you can't predict that. So almost every artificial sweetener has been discovered by somebody doing a lab experiment, trying to do something else, like make, say, an ulcer drug, and then they are eating a sandwich later and their fingers taste sweet. And they got a little of this compound by mistake, but you couldn't have predicted that there was sweetness there.
And the guy who was told by his boss to test a particular sweetener, and he thought the boss said, taste the sweetener.
Yes, that's my favorite one. I think that, I've forgotten which sweetener that is, but almost every sweetener, I think every single artificial sweetener I could find began that way, with somebody just tasting something sweet and then going backwards. So they were not looking for artificial sweeteners. And so I think there's a lot of things where, people just happen on something that's a pre-existing solution. And then they kind of go looking for the problem to fit it, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does. Yeah. Those are the two forms of serendipity that I see you interested in. The one where you see a problem and you're on the ground and you know how to do something about it. The surgeons, for example, that you mentioned earlier, and then coming up with something and then seeing, well, this could be an answer to something. One of the phrases you use is using serendipity to explore the unknown unknown. Could you tell us about what you're thinking there, please?
Yeah, so that also gets down to, why we have to spend so much money on science. And actually, after I wrote a piece for the Times on serendipity, and after that, and during that writing that piece, I connected with this wonderful organization called the Golden Goose Awards. Do you know about them?
No, I don't.
And they advocate for serendipity in science, aka spending a lot of money on science, because their whole, what they're trying to communicate to the public is that you have to give scientists a lot of money to try things, and without knowing what's going to happen. I mean, that is the essence of science. And the public doesn't, and their response, there's those of us who are older probably know about the Golden Fleece Awards, which were a Republican conservative senator came up with this idea in the 70s, I think. He would hand it out to discredit science and say, oh, well, we gave you guys $1 million and all you did was study the sex life of boll weevils. And this was to make fun of science and to try to defund it. But of course, if you're studying the sex lives of boll weevils, you're figuring out how to protect the cotton crop.
Yeah.
So it is very valuable. It's just you can make this whole endeavor sound ridiculous and worthless, if you want to, very easily. So that's why the Golden Fleece Awards, the Golden Goose Awards, they'll give awards to scientists who made serendipitous discoveries. So
that's what they do. Okay.
Probably 2/3 of the Nobel laureates out there would qualify for a Golden Goose Award because they did something that they had an accidental discovery or they had some major moment of serendipity where they saw something and fell in love with it, and it didn't really make sense, and they followed up on it.
We're coming to the end of our program here, and what I come away with is that if we're going to fund science, we want to have super encounterers doing the work that you just described.
Yes, and lots of money, It's very expensive, and we need to fund science heavily in order to get discoveries. Yes.
Okay, Pagan, thank you very, very much for talking with me today. It's been a delight.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're listening to Connecting with Coincidence with your host, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, and our guest has been Pagan Kennedy and Serendipity.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie, natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.